Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Kommon Nonsense with Kevin. No Kobe this time around. This is actually the first show that I ever did on YouTube was this little thing that I did with a friend of mine named Kobe called Kommon Nonsense as well. So, in an effort to keep the name going, I'm going to be doing my own show as often as possible. Going to try for a daily thing, but with the school coming up, probably not going to happen. But I just want to give you guys a brief introduction on the kind of stuff that's going to be discussed on the show. This is a show around kind of the interests that I have, taking, my holistic approach to the way I approach everything in life, and just going over the stuff that I find interesting with you guys. Everything from politics and philosophy to TV shows to games to sports, especially huge sports guy. So that's just the kind of stuff I'm going to be talking on. I'm trying to talk about the subjects that us normal Americans care about, not going over what the political elites want us to care about. So I guess to start this show off, I'm gonna give a brief. I'll just go over a little bit. For those who are unaware, I self-identify as an anarcho-capitalist, which means that I believe that all transactions should be done voluntarily. All relationships are consensual, and that I do not really believe that there is any legitimacy in the state. So, I do I'm on principle, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, but there's a lot of principles out there that don't really have much practice in theory, and the reality is that the world is unique and special, and so in the end, there's I could feel certain ways about the capitalism and all that kind of stuff, but you still have to remember that humans are unique, we are special, and that we demand unique approaches to the world. So I have my theories, my political theories and stuff like that, but everything still needs to be handled on an individual day-to-day basis. And as much as I do not personally believe the state has any level of legitimacy, there's most people do. And so we have to exist in a world where the state for now is there. It's a permanent kind of thing, but that doesn't mean that we have to go along with everything it does. So in practice, I am, a minarchist, a limitarian, if you will. I want as small a government as possible. I want as small an infringement as possible into people's lives, because I feel, freedom is ours to be had. Liberty is it's hard to catch. It is hard to develop, and it is incredibly easy to lose. And it's lost through apathy, and it's lost through non-action. And I believe a lot of the problems that we have in the world today are a direct result of the non-action of people in response to specifically politics and the culture. We want to talk about why Congress basically always has under 10% approval ratings. Well, a big part of that is the fact that we as Americans have not done our job to make sure that the people we are electing into office are reflective of our values. There's the standard, we see it all the time. There's basically there's this assumed truth that all politicians are corrupt, and yet we reward them for their corruption, and reward because we do not take the time to actually learn what it is that they're saying, what it is that they're doing, when they're not directly addressing us. Because if we truly do want to save our country, or if we truly do want to, I don't know, stop this train from plunging directly over the cliff, we have to take accountability for why it is that our system has deteriorated to the level that it is currently at right now. So that's basically a little bit on my political philosophy. I believe in doing good to others. I am a Christian man. I have a very strong belief in God, and I believe in treating others the way that they should be treated. And so, hi everyone. Hi Janine. Thank you for watching. Dylan, I wish I was a little bit prettier. I'm sorry, but yeah. So that's kind of my views on the political side of things as far as what that goes. Do be a good person, do good for you, and build the community that you want to see in the world. If you have problems with the community, with your community, it's your responsibility to go out and take action to help cultivate the culture and community that you want to live in. And so when it comes to everything else, other things in life, I kind of just take a realistic approach to things. So, for example, um, there's been a lot in the news about we've been dealing with COVID for a while. My whole approach to COVID from the beginning has been science. Science is a real thing. Science does dictate stuff, but we actually, if we are going to say we stick by the science, we have to be honest in our understanding and our analysis of it. So from the very beginning, the stance has been, what does the science say? The science says that if you are 65 years or older, or you have certain comorbidities, you do actually have a very high chance of serious complications from COVID. If you are healthy and under the age of 45, basically, you should. Sorry, I believe people should be treated the way they want to be treated by other people. Thank you, Dylan. I am prophetic in ways, I guess. But yeah, with the whole COVID thing, the science is the science, and so that does not mean it's a monolithic thing. That means that there's a lot going into it, and there's a lot of data available for me to make my own individual determination of the risk level I'm willing to take. So personally, having had COVID, I don't find myself needing to get the vaccine because the science says my natural immunity is just as strong as the vaccine, if not some studies say stronger. However, we've seen a lot of people who are unable to disassociate what they want to be true from what is actually true. There are a lot of things we wish were true because it would strengthen our side's opinion. And by our side, I mean whatever side of the political line you fall on. We want stuff to line up and make it seem right, but you know what? We're not going to be right about everything. So if you do want to be right about everything, the only way you can ever actually accomplish that is by tailoring your response to new information. By when someone proves your idea is wrong, you take that information in, you adapt it, and you try to, think using that information, reassess how you view things. And so we don't. The way we currently deal with things, basically if someone doesn't like what we're saying, our immediate response is some level of attack on them. And unfortunately for us, I think my Wi-Fi is having some problems. Let me correct this really quick. I might drop out. My bad Wi-Fi is for some reason the one that I'm connected to. Let's see if my computer wants to behave today. Does not look like it does. Let's go. Yeah, so I believe that it's my first one, Eric. Give me a break. Drugs are bad, okay, and I still think they should be legal. That is something to be talked about. So I see a lot of, on the conservative side of things, a lot of the understanding that doing drugs is destructive on your life and can have bad repercussions. And then on the liberal side of things, I see a lot of people don't deserve to have their life taken away or crushed or destroyed simply because they were doing drugs of some kind or had drugs. I believe they have a right to put whatever they want in their body. But at the end of the day, I also don't think a drug-addicted community is a strong community. Just because I want something to be legal does not mean that I want it to be normalized or accepted. You are still allowed to say, hey, look, I don't think that you should be doing these things. If you have a friend addicted to drugs, you have every right to be like, hey, what can I do to help you with this addiction? Go out and reach out. But what I don't think should happen is if you have a friend who's addicted to drugs, they should be thrown in a 4x8 cell for months or years at a time, up to a life sentence. I believe that is cruel, and that is an unfortunate result of people being unable to make distinctions between the morality they want to see and the morality that they want to, and the coercion to attain that morality. So with drugs especially, I've looked at the data, I've looked at the science, I've looked at the experiments. Drug addiction is most times a direct result of, I am just going to take the time here to fix my in really quick. So bear with me. I'm going to drop out really quick and I'll be right back. All right, that should be a little bit better. If you're watching this, would you please, would you please let me know if it's all right, if it's any better, and or just continue to let me know if it's going bad or anything. But yeah, so with drugs, especially if you look at it from the conservative side of the aisle, you can understand why it is. Drug addiction, having a community where there's a lot of drug addiction, there's also a lot of crime. There's also a lot of, there's broken homes, broken communities. But the thing is that that's not a result of the drug addiction. A drug addiction is just as much a symptom of another problem as the crime, as the broken communities. Yeah, let's throw the DEA's budget into treatment rather than prevention. Because there's a bunch of facets that go into this. First and foremost, you'll have conservatives that acknowledge that black markets exist wherever you make anything illegal when it comes to guns because they want guns. Therefore, that argument works. But when it's used on drugs, that's not a good enough argument, right? So what they don't want the black market to exist for guns because they want to be able to easily access guns, but they do want the black market to exist for drugs because they don't like drugs. At the end of the day, the black market is just as bad for both. The black market for drugs is billions of dollars, is destroying communities all across the world, from Mexico and in Colombia all the way over to, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the chief export basically of Afghanistan at this point is poppy seeds. They have nothing but poppy fields everywhere, and I'm having a mustache attack on my nose. I promise I'm not doing the drugs. I promise that's not from cocaine or anything. It's just an itch on the nose. But this black market for guns, it's used as a great argument against why they should be illegal. But when it's used on drugs, it's as if it goes one ear and out the other. And now, like I said, you have these communities being destroyed. You have these communities being ravaged by the drug trade, wherein you have basically gangs, cartels have to run it, and they have to enforce their own laws upon it and maintain their own monopoly on it, which leads to just a lot more death and destruction than absolutely necessary. And you have them cutting, hi Sherry, you have them cutting other drugs into the drugs that are then going to be used on our streets, and it ends up, this does more harm than good. Rather than acknowledging the fact that a friend of yours being drug addicted is probably, if you look at their life, they've probably got a lot of other things going wrong too. Drugs is never just, it's not never, almost never just, everything in my life is going well, so I'm also going to start doing heroin, right? That's very rarely is that ever the case. And so, by making it illegal, you just make everything even worse. It becomes even harder to get people off of drugs. It becomes even harder to get people back to being productive members of a community, and you end up in the long term with a more broken community. And we can just ask ourselves, has the war on drugs succeeded? No, it has not. It has been an abject failure. It has destroyed many communities across America. And at the end of the day, it addresses a problem, or it addresses a symptom to a problem that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge really is a problem. That is the breakdown of the community across this country. And if we want to address these are things that we have to work together on. Now, to get to the liberal side of the drug debate, it comes off as if they want everyone to do drugs. Yeah, everyone should be encouraged to do drugs. If you want to do drugs, do drugs. That's perfectly fine. A lot similar to their stance on transgenderism, but I'll get to that at another point. The liberal side of it almost completely ignores the fact that for most people, doing drugs is a way of escaping some other pain that has presented itself in their life, some other pain that they see as too difficult to get beyond without some kind of help. And rather than asking your friend, why is it? It's like, oh yeah, cool. Let's do it. Come on, yeah. Let's try it. And, it can, as with a lot of things on the left, this idea that they conflate this idea that you shouldn't be killed for doing it with you should basically be encouraged to do it. Um, and so because they have that conflation there, it makes it their argument for why it should be legal also sounds really bad, because it's almost as if they want a drug addicted community. They don't talk about the fact that in places where they either decriminalize or outright legalize, you see a slight uptick in the first year as people try, and then a dramatic drop in addiction the following years, because people don't like overall. You might do drugs once or twice, but the first time addiction rate of heroin, which is the most addicting drug there is just over 10%, like at its worst. And that's when most people doing it are at their most broken and most vulnerable to it. At the end of the day, what's really funny is if you want to get addicted to heroin or a heroin byproduct, don't go see your drug dealer, go see your doctor. Go see, if you want to get addicted to heroin, go in and say your back hurts and go talk to your doctor, and you're going to be on all the heroin opiate or / opiates you could ever want, because speaks to another problem, which is as much as the war on drugs has been against stuff like marijuana, they've let the worst possible thing in the world, which is the prescribed drug, completely permeate our entire society, to the point where you have entire states like West Virginia being brought to their knees by an opiate epidemic that is destroying their country, their communities. And so this war on drugs is a false war. It's a war only to exert power. Only the communities. There is something to be said for this idea that the war on drugs was targeting a lot of Black and brown communities, because that's where you saw it a lot. Granted, there is something else to be said for what you see in a lot of broken down white rural communities, such as in Arkansas, Alabama, those places where Kentucky, where the meth trade is huge. In fact, what's really funny is I grew up in suburban Los Angeles in a small town called Glendora. Now, this is just to prove to you how ineffective this war on drugs is and how it can really present itself anywhere. Glendora, which is a very nice city, it's a upper middle class suburb outside of LA. And in 2006, we were, I think, number 3 in the state of California and like number 5 on the West Coast in meth production. This very unassuming community with, it's not like we got trailer parks. You had people renting older homes and filling them with meth labs. And so it's like the war on drugs doesn't work. What we need to do is first, unfortunately, you got to legalize, let us prescribe it. The Swiss model, the one that they used to destroy their opium addiction rate, which I believe in the 90s got up to around 2%. Yes, oxy is definitely the upper class heroin. In fact, there's even more than that, dilaudid and stuff like that, fentanyl. We have an issue where you see these treatments being prescribed for basically everything. This drug trade, the war on drugs, right? That is supposed to be cleaning our communities, but all it's really done is create a monopoly on pharmaceuticals. Now, like I was saying before, if you look at the Swiss model, when they cut their heroin addiction rate in their country down, I believe it was 2%, but you're going to have to correct me on it. The way they did it was first they tried to criminalize, and when that didn't work, they legalized outright. Except the way it was done is you had to go into a government-run, basically heroin dispensary. And in this dispensary, they would have therapists, they would have job applications, they would have support groups, they would have all the kind of things someone in that position would need to actually be able to stop doing heroin. And their whole deal was, all right, whatever heroin you want, we're going to give it to you, but you have to talk to these people first. You have to interact. You have to, if you want your heroin, you have to actually talk to us about why it is you're here. And we'll give it to you. And you can come back as much as you want and get as much as you want. Also, they had doctors on standby, so if someone did something stupid, they would be able to be saved. And it has gotten to the point where they were no longer necessary. It was so effective in treating their heroin epidemic that it got to the point where these dispensaries were getting shut down, not because of lack of funding or anything or no support, but because they weren't needed anymore. If you want to address drug addiction, you have to address your community, which is why when I look at both the conservative and the liberal side of things, I'm like, you know what, guys, you have points. And if it wasn't for a mainstream media that wanted to divide us so thoroughly from each other, we would actually be able to come to an understanding that, hey, maybe the outside dealers should be the ones being punished. Maybe giving it to a child should be punished. But if you want to do it as an adult, you should be allowed to do it as an adult. I personally do not encourage you to do it. And if you find yourself in a position where you're wanting to do these drugs as an escape, not just doing shrooms once with your friends, right, or acid once with your friends, but doing heroin every day so you can ignore so that when you go to bed at night, you can go to sleep not having to think about the fact that the next day you have to wake up and go through the pain and suffering all over again. If we can really address these kinds of issues, that's how you have to do it. You have to actually address the personal side of things, and that's where especially as someone who interacts with a lot of libertarians, I think this is where they have an issue. A lot of them kind of just like, well, it's not me, not my problem. But because you said not me, not my problem, and you made no effort to help this person out, them and so many like them got to a point where the people around them said, okay, let's let the government deal with this. And so through apathy, through not wanting, because here's the thing, if you're going to argue that the state shouldn't do it, something else has to do it. So if you're going to argue that the state shouldn't be treating drugs or dealing with drug problems, then that means that we have to, that you have to take it upon yourself to talk to your friend or talk to your neighbor about their drug problem and try to reach out and be their friend, and try to reach out and be the thing that fills that void in their life that they're using heroin to fill. Maybe it's the human connection that they're actually missing. And what's even more funny is that the war on drugs, all it did was was make it so that pharmaceuticals have a monopoly on the drug trade. For those of you who think that cocaine is illegal, don't worry, it's not. I think it's called Goprelto, is the pharmaceutical name for cocaine, and it is legal. Heroin, you got every single opiate you could ever want. Meth, talk to any kid, any boy age in between first grade and fifth grade, and they're all on Adderall or Ritalin, which is basically meth. You have like all these drugs are legal. Weed has been available in pill form, and I forget what the name of it is, but it's been available as a pill for like a decade now, well over a decade. When they make the drug illegal, all it means is that they're only going to let pharmacies produce it in a monopolistic fashion and not tell anyone about it. So Marinol there. Thank you, Eric. That is the one. Marinol is the weed form. So it's like the war on drugs. First and foremost, don't ever trust a single thing that Nixon does. The guy was a crook. Okay, Nixon was a crook. And yet we're supposed to believe that this was for the best. We now know that the conspiracy, I hope you guys can hear my air quotes if you're listening, that the CIA was funding the crack epidemic is not a conspiracy. It was true. The CIA was directly funding the crack cocaine trade in order to generate their own funding for illicit acts across the world. So it's like, if the conservatives and the liberals could just drop it for a moment, instead of saying, no, my approach needs to be right, realize that, hey, look, liberals, you're correct that your life doesn't need to be ruined, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you should be encouraging it. And liberals need to look and go, look, we understand that, we don't want everyone addicted to drugs, but at the same time, I don't think someone's life should be ruined over it. You can find common ground, but there's a concerted effort to make sure that we never find this common ground. So that's kind of my explanation on that kind of stuff. I also one of my passions in life, for those who don't know, is video gaming and sports. I got, as you can see on my wall there, I've got Manchester United, I've got the Lakers. I'm a huge sports guy and huge video game guy, and it's been very, very depressing this last year and a half, 2 years, watching specifically watching sports, video games. Video games are not too bad. Eric, controlled opposition. So Eric asks, are you getting the vibe that conservatives in our government are controlled opposition. I believe that there are members of the Republican establishment that are absolutely there to maintain the status quo that they themselves have been benefiting from for so long. People like your Lindsey Grahams, your Mitch McConnells, we know who these people are. My whole thing is I really don't trust any politician over the age of 50, because you've been around too long to not know that there's a game that needs to be played. So I think that there is a level of controlled opposition. I think you see that a lot from people like AOC. She comes out and she'll speak strongly in favor of democratic socialist ideals, and then cave immediately to supporting the Democratic line almost as soon as necessary. You don't really see it. The Republicans lately, the Republican Party, the establishment ones at least within it have to be feeling the heat that they're getting, because the Republican base is just sick and tired of it. I will give them credit. They saw through it a lot quicker than the Democratic base did. Hence why the Democrats are still voting for establishment. Although you're seeing more younger Democrats like the Ilhan Omars and AOCs and stuff, as whether or not that's a good thing. But you're also seeing it on the Republican side. So I think that there's always a level of controlled opposition, because this politics is such a power-driven, top-heavy game that there's so much, you're able to control so much who's allowed in and out. But that's not a total control. There is not a totalitarian, monopolistic hold by the parties over the political system. As much as we think it is very close. It is incredibly difficult to enter into politics as an outsider, but they don't have a tyrannical control of it entirely, and so therefore not everyone can be controlled opposition. But there definitely is a level of, okay, we want this politician, all right, this guy's running in this district, we're going to support him because he's going to be easy to control. We're going to support this one here because he's going to be easy to control. I'm not saying that always that person ends up winning that election, but definitely I can assure you that most races will have someone that is like that on each side. So if you only see one candidate for both, chances are that's a plant. Or not that it's a plant, but it's an easy target. So they're going to put someone that's going to be someone that they like in that position. How to tell which one is not the controlled opposition? If you're in a no contest district, say there's a Republican running, and say I decide, hey, I'm going to run, and then all of a sudden, in a district where normally no more than one person ever runs, you got two running, and it only happened after the first one said they were going to run. That second one that's coming in is going to be the party plant, most likely, because they're going to evaluate the OG going in there, and if it's like, this guy looks very sketchy, he's going to cause waves, he's going to come in and he's standing for some stuff, okay, go find someone to run in that district and throw money at him. So, but yeah, so I think that it all comes down to the American people don't want to put in the time, politically speaking, and they shouldn't have to. But this is gonna segue well into my next topic, which is the thing is that to fix this problem, we need to pay more attention to politics, right? To fix it. The problem, the Democrats understand this concept of to fix it, you need more participation. So they saw Donald Trump as the biggest problem. And their cure for it was to get more people politically motivated and politically active. The problem with it is that the more people you get involved in politics, the harder it is to keep up the facade of politics, which is, hey, we've got this under control. So while they needed to infiltrate, they needed to use those fingers that they had planted in every single TV show and sporting event and everything, what have you. They used it. They played that card. They said, we're going to get everyone speaking about politics and thinking about politics. We're gonna put it in every show, every sporting event, everywhere, so that no one can avoid it. The problem with that is that you need to turn that interest off almost immediately, or people start to actually pay attention and see through. Because the state, above all, the state depends on the passive acquiescence of the people, the passive consent of the people. So if people start actually looking into it, such as with COVID and stuff, such as with the election in 2020, people start to think, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem like the people running it are doing a good job. And next thing you know, the establishment starts getting threatened. So they're facing a bit of a conundrum right now in that they got a lot of people interested in politics, and for the Democratic side, whose entire agenda rests on appeals to emotion and removal of logic and reason, that works for only a small portion of the country. That middle moderate portion, they're apathetic for the most part, but when they start looking into things, it's very easy to see, oh wait, all of this stuff can't be free. How are we going to pay for it? That's a very easy question a lot of people ask. How are we going to pay for it? And it's not just that. Now you have CRT and stuff going in their classrooms, and parents having to actually take an interest in this. Why? Parents ask the question, why is my child being taught that there is a glass ceiling, that because of their skin color they're never going to be able to get through? That's wrong. Or why is my child being taught that just because of their skin color they're a slave owning evil person? It's the more light that is shined on that the Democrats, and then by the way, the Democrats did it themselves, the more light that is shined on the problems, the more people are able to see. Obviously, I just truly believe they fundamentally underestimated the American people and our intelligence, if you will. There's this really bad idea that most people are stupid. It's like most people are apathetic of the higher intellectual ideas, if you will, like the philosophy, the stuff that I go and do, the Heidegger. I got Heidegger sitting back there. I've got the wonderful Isabel Brown, if you could see her book right there, Franz Fanon right next to her. It's like I've got those books, and I have an interest in it. But most people don't have that interest, and there's no problem with that. Who wants I can fully see why people do not ever want to take the time to read any of the stuff, and they shouldn't have to. The problem is that once people start having to pay attention, the Democrats don't want that. Once people start paying attention, questions start being really serious. Questions start to be asked of your government and of the people in charge. And trust me, most establishment politicians don't want that, and especially the Democrats don't want that, whose entire platform falls apart under any level of actual rational scrutiny for questions such as how is this going to be paid for? Who is this really going to benefit? You have parents taking charge at school districts. I was just at an event this last weekend. There's a mother who is starting her own school up in Silverthorne, Colorado here because she was sick and tired of what was going on in the public school system. So, they decided to play their hand against Cheeto Hitler, and it's going to come back to bite him because he was not the worst thing ever. Not my favorite president, but honestly, I don't think he was terrible. They played their hand with it. It's going to bite him so hard in the ass in the end because there's a lot of people that are being woken up, and some of their platform does make sense, but there's a lot of it that doesn't. And then when you're hearing people say, we've closed the northern border because of COVID, and then when asked, okay, why haven't we closed the southern border? It's like politics. There's so many questions are being asked now where the only potential possible answer is politics. Like, why do the vaccinated have to wear masks? Oh, to protect the unvaccinated. Why? I made my decision. You don't have to wear a mask. You're not going to die because of my disease. The only thing that could possibly happen is I'm dying because of your disease. And you know what? I have said yes to that risk. You don't have to wear a mask. But why do you wear a mask? Because you don't want to be seen as conservative, or you don't want to be seen as a Trump supporter, because they played their hand. They turned being a conservative Trump supporter into the greatest evil one can commit in America. They're contradicting themselves basically every day. There's no science backing up half of what they say, and people are actually starting to do even that, which is kind of looking to science. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction because people are starting to question the government. The Democratic Party made some big mistakes in setting up the people to care about what the government has to say, and I think that especially when it comes to what they did with sports and entertainment, as a massive sports fan, it's been so painful how much politicking, if you will, has been going into sports over the last couple of years. And a lot of these guys, like, they are smart enough to see their platform, but they're not smart enough to do any kind of thinking about it. They have money, so they're told this is the idea, and they want to seem smart, so they have this college-educated rich businessman in front of them, this rich liberal businessman in front of them, saying, "Yeah, this is what we need to do." And your athletes are like, "Dude, that makes so much sense. I'm all aboard. Let me go out there and I'll protest with you guys, and I'll say my part." They're never exposed to any kind of alternative view. They're never even allowed the idea that the alternative view is okay. I was banned from the NFL subreddit on Reddit because I was using reason to dispute um, the universality of the vaccine. I'm not saying the vaccines are bad. I'm 100%. The vaccines could very well be these modern scientific marvels, and they most likely are. But I personally have not seen the long-term data. The Johns Hopkins acknowledges that there are no long-term data available, and so there should be no problem with me saying I am not getting it because, according to my own personal risk-reward calculations, I don't need it. I got banned for saying that, so they are using this to get into every facet of life, and people are going to get tired of it because I'll tell you what. People just want to be left alone. I want to live my life. I want to live my life and interact with my friends and go about my business and just live in love, right? Just enjoy the company around me. And, the government's making it harder and harder to do that. So I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. We've gone on for just over 30 minutes. This was a good introductory episode. Tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to do it tomorrow or Thursday for my next episode, but I'm going to come in. I'm going to be a little bit more directed. I'm going to have some actual stories I want to talk about. Today was kind of sort of just to ramble a little bit to give you guys an idea of where I come from on a lot of these issues. So thank you so much for joining me here at Kommon Nonsense. If you enjoyed what I said here, you can find more of my content and the rest of the content from the Liberty Revolt Media crew, of which this is an affiliate at libertyrevoltmedia.com. We have Liberty Organics over there. If you are a fan of CBD, we are coming out with our own version of it. And it is currently off being tested right now for its efficacy and for its ingredient list. So be on the lookout for that if you are interested. Don't forget to catch more of us on Be the Change in our friendly podcast. So once again, thank you guys so much for joining me. I am Kevin LaRusso, and this has been Kommon Nonsense.